Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, 2025 Process Automation Predictions. My name is Niamh Lorden. I'm the Head of Marketing here at FlowForma, and I'll be your host for today's session. You're all very welcome. Before we get started, I just want to share a few tips for participating in today's webinar. Please note this webinar is being recorded. Your lines are muted. But should you require any assistance throughout the webinar for audio support or otherwise, please email info@flowforma.com. We want to make this session as interactive for you as possible. Please participate in our polls throughout this webinar, and should you have any questions for our panelists, please pop them into the questions box, and we will do our best to answer these in the live Q&A. Okay, well, next I'm going to introduce you all to our experts today. Delighted to be joined by these fantastic panelists today. Firstly, I will introduce James Corcoran. James is Head of AI and Analytics at the Strategic Technology Analyst Centre. Hi, James. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Hi, Niamh. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. Okay. And Jared Newman is our CTO here at FlowForma. Thanks for joining the panel, Jared.
No problem, Niamh. Very welcome. Good to be here.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we've had loads of interest in today's session to hear everything related to AI and automation for the year ahead. I think it's going to be a very much a transformative year for all things automation. So without further ado, let's just get started and jump into our predictions and agenda. And I guess for everyone on the webinar today, I guess we're all here to equip you with actionable insights and tips that are going to help you get ahead of the curve in 2025 and really help you achieve the outcomes that you want to derive from 2025. Our agenda today is to cover 5 top predictions from our panel. Towards the end, we will also share our top 3 tips for automation success. We'll have a quick intro to FlowForma, as I know a lot of people on the call are new to the product, and then we'll have a live Q&A. So make sure to pop all those great questions into the chat. Okay, prediction 1. I think this is quite an exciting prediction, and I guess what we're seeing here is that a key prediction for 2025 is that AI is no longer going to be on the periphery anymore, and it's going to become much more deeply integrated into business operations and all the outcomes that are going to come with that. And so, James, I'd love to put that prediction to you and for you to share a little bit more context here and some tips for our audience.
Sure, Niamh. I think if you look at 2024, it was undoubtedly the year where we all became familiar with AI and Gen AI in particular. Everyone started using ChatGPT or various LLMs, both in personal lives and at work. Most organizations will probably admit that employees sort of organically used generative AI to become more efficient at what they were doing, to help them scale up operations, but sort of on a sort of individual basis or maybe a small team basis. If we look at 2025, the prediction here is that enterprises will become a lot more serious about rolling out Gen AI at scale in a controlled and predictable way. This would encompass everything from sort of thinking about how your teams collaborate using Gen AI in their sort of day-to-day processes. It'll look at things like enterprise guardrails. So we can use generative AI and LLMs and chatbots and things like that in a secure way and in a way that senior management are comfortable with teams leveraging on a day-to-day basis. There are platforms out there that'll sell into enterprises that'll standardize the implementation of generative AI. But the most important thing is that businesses are starting to look at this holistically across different operational areas, I guess. If you look at industries, I'm familiar with financial services and healthcare and telco and these sorts of industries. I think every industry is going to integrate and implement AI and generative AI. I tend to look at sort of horizontal operational areas more so, and the use cases like customer support, back office for sure, will integrate AI in a much more scaled way in 2025 than we saw in 2024. Interestingly, a lot of conversations that I'm having are sort of taking aim at sort of middle management and looking for ways to become more efficient in how they run their businesses. So absolutely, we're going to see more and more AI, more thoughtful implementation at the enterprise level. And I think that'll differentiate 2025 from what happened in 2024.
Love that, and I love the piece about thoughtful integration. I think that sums it up very well, James. And Jared, anything you'd like to add to this prediction?
Yeah, listen, it's interesting listening to James talking there. I think last year in our predictions webinar, we talked about bring your own AI to work. And that's, I think, exactly what's happened. Whether organizations want to or have a strategy around AI or not during 2024, people just brought their own AI tools to work and used it to help them do their job. I think also we have a lot of AI creeping into organizations through applications that people use. Nearly every application you use, every SaaS application now has an AI element to it. Everything has the little stars in it that will allow you to do various things, some of which is useful, some of which really isn't very useful. And we can see things like Copilot and things in Microsoft Office as well, which is gaining traction. A lot of people are using it. So AI really is ubiquitous. And I think the real challenge is to embed it into your organization, but on your terms and not just to let it happen. So I think that's really about defining your goals and strategies, and then supporting your organization, getting it ready really for more of this embedded AI. And that's through things like educating people, communicating with what the overall strategy is, and then gradually integrating, as James says, really over time. So I think for we're going to see organizations over this year embedding it definitely and allowing that be the next step in their evolution, improving themselves, improving their processes, etc. And then I think we see other organizations just completely embedding it to allow them revolutionize what they do, completely change their offerings, change their processes, and bring different products to the market. So I think we're going to see both of those things happening and organizations kind of progressing at different speeds.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Jared. Okay, and then our prediction number two today. So I love this. It's a really, I guess, a practical prediction from Craig Leclerc, who is a digital process automation analyst at Forrester. Um, so Craig Leclerc is advising that he thinks the key to automation success in 2025 will be balancing AI innovation with the scale and reliability of proven tools. So Jared, I'd love to put that prediction to you. We'd love to hear how you recommend that people on the call today go about achieving that balance and any tips
Yeah,
that you
sure.
have for them. Thank you.
I'm happy to talk to that. So, depending on predictions you read in generally out there and people's overall commentary, I personally think that sort of 2025 is a bit early for completely automated processes using Gen AI in the background. And I think instead what's going to happen is organizations are going to look to leverage AI within their existing automation platforms. So, for example, if organizations are using tools like DPA or RPA or something like that, they're going to see how they can gain further operational efficiencies by layering AI into those types of environments. So I think we may well see rudimentary AI agents being used to make certain types of decisions in 2025. And I think in cases where there's clear data, clear parameters, clear rules as to how you make a decision, then I think we're going to see that happening. And integrating those kind of agents into a process, I think, will obviously give you efficiencies and productivity gains, etc. And it should make processes more responsive and eliminate some of the human-introduced delays. Um, but I think also that organizations that have already gone away on their automation journey using things like DPA, they're in actually a better place to start layering in AI. And the reason I think that is because like there's an existing automation framework in place. They've been collecting data over a number of years. They have clarity on what their processes are. They know where the decision points are in those kind of things. And they also have monitoring and controls around the process. So I think all of those things make it a bit easier for organizations to introduce AI when they have that kind of automation already in place. And I think, we've talked a lot about kind of keeping the human in the loop on this. So when you're introducing a Gen AI based capability into your process automation in general, people are going to start off by monitoring that closely and keeping that human in the loop. But what the AI agent is effectively doing for you is preparing work for you. So I think that the established kind of DPA tool sets that people have today are constantly having AI capabilities added to them. And it's not just in making processes more efficient, it's also in making the creation of those processes more efficient. So I think, people who are on that automation journey already are in a position to take advantage of it. And I think organizations that haven't yet started an automation journey, they might be holding out for further AI advances and enhancements. But I think in 2025, organizations are going to say, well, if I do invest some time and effort in automating my existing processes, it's going to put me in a much better position to take advantage of what AI is going to give me in 2025 and in subsequent years as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Jared. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting tip and piece of advice for our audience today. James, what's your perspective on this prediction?
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between proving that AI can work in an environment and you getting it into production. And as part of my work, I talk to a lot of the global investment banks in London and New York, and I was talking to one senior executive recently enough who is of the opinion that generative AI is more of a software engineering problem than it is a data science problem, which I thought was a sort of a neat way of looking at it. And to Jared's point around the automation tools, existing mature tools that have automated business processes for a long time have figured out how to get into production, how to automate workflows, how to do it in a scalable way and also an explainable way. There's sort of a gulf between writing a sort of a toy AI app and some of the mature automation solutions that exist out there. So I think this balance is probably right in terms of how to look at integrating AI into existing automation frameworks and tools. It's for sure the fast track to get into production this year.
Super. Thanks for that, James. I guess given that this prediction is talking about success for the year ahead, I just want to run a very quick poll just to ask the audience what their automation and AI success looks like for the year ahead. So let me just launch this quick poll. Okay, our poll is not working. Maybe I should have used AI to generate the poll for us. So we will just skip that one. Okay, so moving on to prediction three. Okay, so I guess it wouldn't be a 2025 predictions webinar without talking about agentic AI. So all the analysts, all the consulting firms are all talking about the fact that agentic AI is going to have a significant focus for organizations in 2025. And I'm pretty excited, James, to hear about how the agents can help me unlock more productivity. And I guess everyone on the webinar is thinking the same. So would love to get your thoughts on how this prediction is going to unfold this year and into the coming years.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you're right. You can't talk about AI in 2025 without talking about agents. And there's a lot of hype about agents, coming into the second half of last year. We saw that. And despite all of that hype and lots and lots of analyst firms talking about how agentic AI will completely revolutionize the way we work. We need to be careful we don't get caught up too much in the hype and stay sort of grounded in reality and what this type of AI can do for us and how to roll it out. The the main thing to be cognizant around agentic AI is that it's sort of a new architecture, new way of thinking about deploying this type of technology. And as with any new technology, the architecture sort of evolves very rapidly. If you go back to what sort of preceded agentic AI, you come across stuff like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and even those architectures have evolved significantly between what was once considered state of the art. 6 months later is probably a suboptimal architecture, and things move on and evolve. So agentic AI will definitely evolve as we go through 2025, and its adoption at scale will likely hinge on trustworthiness and efficiency. Um, where we see agentic AI at the moment is that it's a little bit tricky to demonstrate or to guarantee the trustworthiness, and then the software architecture around agentic AI is probably suboptimal at the moment. Now, that will evolve very quickly as we go through sort of Q1 and Q2 in 2025. But important to note that even the big AI players who have a lot to gain from the rollout of agentic systems sort of cautioned towards the back end of last year that there are some things to be cognizant of, particularly as it comes to trustworthiness and efficiency. That said, I've had several conversations with senior executives in some of the large banks here in London around how they are planning to roll out agentic AI in 2025. Some of the things they're looking at are how to define roles for agents within teams, how to have teams that have agents and humans collaborating together, how you orchestrate multiple agents within a team, how you interview agents for selection into your team, and how you grade them, score them, rank them, just as you would do maybe an appraisal or an annual review for an employee. So banks, in particular, in my line of work, have taken this very, very seriously. They're already well into the proof of concept phase with agentic AI and starting now to think about these sort of elements of trustworthiness and efficiency, treating it as much a software engineering problem as a data science problem.
Thanks for that, James. And how about you, Jared? What is your view on agentic AI for this year and coming years?
You definitely
Do we have enough
can't
time
escape
to
agentic
discuss
AI.
today?
You can't escape it anyway, that's for sure. But I think like specifically focusing in on the process automation space, I think it's going to have a huge impact on it over the coming years. Um, if you think about it, I mean, process automation is all about standardizing your processes and making them more effective, and making them more efficient. And now I think agentic AI has the possibility of obviously sitting into those processes and automating more, making them more effective and efficient, and also has the possibility of potentially replacing certain processes as well. So I personally think that for simple processes that exist in most organizations, an agent may well be able to replace it or replace large chunks of that process. So effectively, you're removing human involvement from it. So you can still monitor it, you can still oversee it, but a lot of the work is being done by an agent. And I think you could do a certain amount of that today, but with what's coming down the tracks in terms of agentic AI, that's going to significantly change that. And then I suppose where I sort of see it, and kind of following on from James's point as well, I would see more autonomous agents being blended into existing processes. So again, they're replacing steps. They're doing things like preparatory work where they're gathering information from different sources and bringing it all to somebody who has to make a decision. They might be making recommendations and say, we should do this or that or the other, and then maybe a human in the loop will actually decide what they want to do. So I think, overall, we're going to see a kind of a blend of agents, intelligent agents, working alongside existing process automation in most cases. And it is hard to predict when exactly we're going to get that kind of more intelligent AI that's going to enable all of that decision making, etc. People are saying towards the end of this year or the back end of this year, so we have to kind of wait and see what happens there. But overall, I think agentic AI is going to have a really significant impact in a very positive way on process automation over the coming years.
Great. Yeah, I love the complementary angle. So if the agents can be complementing the work that us humans are doing and helping us all get more productive every day, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yes, exactly.
So we look forward to seeing more evolvements in this space. Okay, and then on to prediction four. So, yeah, this is one of the areas I love, the whole area of citizen development. And if you've been following FlowForma for a while now, this is a trend we have been talking about for a few years now, the whole rise of the citizen developer. And I guess, Jared, what we're probably seeing in 2024 and 2025 is that AI has even accelerated this trend even more. And Forrester are saying that in 2025, 30% of Gen AI infused apps are going to be created by citizen developers. So that's an exciting advancement. Um, what are your thoughts here? Are you
Yeah,
surprised
no,
on those numbers, Jared?
I would totally agree. I think it's very exciting. And as you're saying, we've been proponents of the whole citizen development idea or developer idea for a long time now. And I think AI is effectively enabling that even further. Um, so we're definitely looking forward to that and seeing what it can actually do. And I think we can take a kind of cue from what's happening in the software development world. And if we look at the last sort of, well, I suppose the last year, and there's such a slew of new tools have become available, which allow software developers create software way quicker and from things like a natural language prompt. So this has made existing software developers way more productive. But what it's also doing is it's enabling new software developers to come on board. And instead of spending all their time learning about architecture patterns and syntax and those kind of things for coding language, they're learning how to use these tools and how to get the best out of them. So it's a kind of mind shift change in the way people go about building software. So that is going to lead to an absolute explosion of new software applications over the coming
Mhm.
years. Um, and there's lots of questions about how those will be maintained and grown and all those kind of things, but that they're problems for the future at the moment anyway. So I think the same thing is going to start happening in the whole process automation space. So I think Gen AI will be leveraged to allow citizen developers implement more widespread automation. And I think what it's going to do is it's going to make it easier for more business users to become citizen developers. So if we look at some of the barriers that we would hit today, a common barrier to wide scale process automation in an organization tends to be a lack of understanding of the existing processes that exist in the organization and also the bandwidth or time that the various people who know those processes actually have to spend working with somebody to automate them. So people just don't have the time to invest in their own automation, which of course is in itself a vicious circle. But I think what Gen AI is going to do is going to help overcome this issue. So what Gen AI gives us is effectively a huge knowledge base of processes that exist in different industries to do different things. And I mean, if you want to try that out today, you can just use some of the commonly available tools like Copilot or ChatGPT and start asking questions about processes. And they'll give you good answers. So like what we've actually done there is we've built that now into the tool that we use to build processes. So what somebody can do is they can start to through chat to effectively interrogate Gen AI or a large language model, and from that sketch out a process or create the skeleton of a process, and they can then build that. And what the way that accelerates things is that now instead of going to a business user with a blank piece of paper or a whiteboard and saying, "Can you explain to me everything that that process does, please?" And I know nothing, so we're starting from scratch. They can now go to a business user and say, "Here's an example process that I built. How does this reflect or compare against our own processes?" And now the business user is more engaged because they can see that it is a short road to automation as opposed to a long road to automation. And I think what that then helps us do is it makes the existing citizen developers more productive. But I think what it also does is it encourages more people to get involved in actually building out processes or automating processes themselves. So it's lowering the barriers to entry of becoming a citizen developer. So I think it's really going to help with this whole concept of citizen developers. And we see kind of trends of this coming about in other industries, and I think it's just going to flow straight through into the whole process automation space. So I think then what will happen after that is we're going to see, and these are the kind of bits coming together to form the whole solution. We're going to see a lot more Gen AI based insights into what's happening in your processes. And now the citizen developer will build a process, it will get implemented, and they'll start getting feedback, which will in turn mean that they improve the process, which means that the user base are more engaged with that particular process, and you'll see they're improving all the time. And I think Gen AI is going to help with that whole feedback loop, which citizen developers need, so that they don't just build something and forget about it and then have to come back to it years later when it needs a major overhaul. So that's my kind of view on how Gen AI is going to help on the whole citizen development movement.
Love it. I think it's really going to help with a scalability point of view as well. And
Yeah.
I guess the people who own the processes are the ones that know them best. So this is great for all of us. Okay, and James, any final thoughts on this prediction?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jared's framework is a good way of looking at this. The one thing to bear in mind is to double click, I guess, in one of the points around software engineering productivity. So absolutely, this is one of the huge use cases for Gen AI, and I know we're going to talk about return on investment in a little while. There's huge return on investment in the area of software engineering productivity. The one thing to bear in mind is that we don't want to end up in a situation where sort of every person in the enterprise of the organization can become a citizen developer, and every citizen developer creates their own app, and then all of a sudden everyone has different apps with different views of the world. So we need to figure out how to roll out this technology in a way that people can collaborate together. I think both technologists and business users to create standardized apps and processes, and we can have one view of the world, so that you can have the debates that you need to have to make decisions in an organization, and do everything without multiple different viewpoints colliding too much within the sort of frame of reference that you're working in. So just one thing to be cognizant, I guess, when it comes to the rollout of this as it pertains to citizen developers.
Yeah, great tips. Thanks for that, Jared and James. And that was a nice segue there, James, you mentioning ROI. Um, so I guess, 2024 felt like it was the year of like AI co-pilots, and it definitely
Mm.
seems like there is a focus in 2025 for organizations now to show that clear ROI from their AI initiatives. And I loved the stat from Gartner. So they're basically calling out that, organizations that will have tangible ROI from AI initiatives next year will outperform peers by 25%. So that's a nice reason to get on board with AI this year. So, James, I guess everyone on the call is probably loving these AI tips, and I'm sure they're playing with AI already, and it's maybe even becoming deeply integrated into their organization. But they're probably thinking, about achieving their real ROI this year. Is that
Mm.
something you can talk to us on and share some insider knowledge and tips for us?
Sure, yeah, and I think this quote from Gartner is probably about right. Um, the 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 place I would start from is to always seek out the high value use cases, and make sure you're not you're running around the organization with a solution looking for a problem, right? So start with the problem first, and figure out kind of where's the business impact. I've talked to a lot of clients of mine who work in large organizations who are setting up hybrid organizational structures with a sort of a centralized um, AI team that will look at things like prioritizing use cases, program management for the implementation of AI compute platforms, and implementing standards and frameworks for AI development. So that all sort of happens in a centralized way. But then ultimately, sort of the build out and the accountability of the success of AI implementation, goes into the business units, and I think that's probably a decent way of sort of setting up sort of AI within at least medium, and large scale organizations. The thing to be mindful of when you're thinking about ROI, particularly at the start of of a project is, it's going to be difficult to measure because, quite often you're not going to know, how much compute I need, how much technology am I going to have to procure, how many people am I going to need to build this. What's probably slightly easier to quantify is sort of expected efficiency gains. And I would have sort of the rollout of AI in sort of two different categories. One is, are we going to become more productive, more efficient? Are we going, is there going to be cost savings? And then the other is, are we going to be more innovative? Are we going to, use AI to build, new products, new services, or compete in the market? Um, the thing I would say about the latter uh, set of use cases is that generative AI tends to sort of give you a standardized answer. So it tends to sort of revert to the mean. And when you're sort of using Gen AI to sort of think about the art of the possible, it's not always going to give you sort of the the silver bullet that your organization needs or has in a very specific area where you can compete better than anyone else. Innovation is quite often brought about by having a contrarian view, and Gen AI won't always give you the contrarian view. At least not with serious levels of prompting. So sort of the initial return on investment feels like it'll more likely come from productivity gains, efficiency gains in areas like customer success, back office process automation, and those things are relatively more straightforward to measure. And I like this sort of hybrid organizational structure that large companies seem to be adopting. I would advocate for that as a sort of a blueprint for implementing generative AI at scale.
Thanks, James. That's great advice there. And Jared, any tips from your side? Any insights
Yeah,
you'd like to share?
I think that all makes sense, and I think it's trying to identify the areas where you're going to actually succeed. And I suppose, what you just need to take into account as well there is ultimately you're introducing change into the organization, so it's always a bit of a change management problem as well. And I think it's important to try and pick areas where the culture is right and willing to take on that kind of change, and that's going to help with your overall chance of success and achieving the kind of return on investment that you're actually hoping to achieve. So I think that's going to be it's an interesting change management problem as you bring more AI to bear upon your organization and the processes that and systems and people that exist within that.
Perfect. Okay, well, that's brought us to the end of our top 5 predictions for 2025. Thank you for all the insights there. Um, and then I guess what we wanted to do was culminate Jared and James' top 3 tips for success in 2025. So, James, you touched on the high impact use cases there. Do you want to share a little bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the last prediction was a good layup for this. So the point I would go back to is to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of having a solution looking for a problem. So identifying high impact use cases is absolutely critical. This has to be done in partnership with the business and the tech teams. That there's no point in either one of those organizations coming up with a use case on their own without collaborating with each other. So I would always start there. There's the phrase here, prioritize repetitive and data heavy tasks. I would add real time into that bucket, like we have on the slide here. But repetitive tasks, it's really interesting. This sort of goes back to sort of the efficiency point and sort of the software architectures from earlier. If you think about the way a lot of people use Gen AI today, you'll ask it to maybe write a document or create like a first draft of some process or document, and then quite often you'll use a series of prompts to sort of tweak it and pull it around and get it to a stage where you're sort of happy to share it with or move to the next level of implementation. That that in itself creates sort of a new process that is itself repetitive. And quite often you're asking the LLM to repeat an inference that it's already done, or it's giving you sort of an answer that's 99% the same as the one it gave you a minute ago, and you might be paying for the compute of all of that inference. So spotting these sort of optimizations that you can employ, whether you're building a new tool or application, or thinking about this as you roll AI out across multiple teams, it's very, very important. But the key thing here is I would say collaboration between business leaders and technologists to agree on the sort of the operational area and the use cases to go after initially.
Thanks, James. And I guess our second tip here from the experts today is about monitoring and optimizing continuously and continuously testing in the background. So, Jared, can you share a little bit more on this tip for the audience?
Yeah, sure. I think when you're introducing any type of new technology into something that's working alongside people, I think it's really important that you are in a position that you can monitor it. I think nowadays our sort of default position to a certain extent is to trust technology. And particularly with Gen AI, we need to be very careful in just monitoring it to make sure that it's doing the kind of things we expect it to do, to make sure that we continually try and improve it and make it better, make it more accurate. So I think having data, particularly before the introduction of Gen AI, to maybe make comparisons with some of the things that Gen AI is suggesting or doing, is really useful. So you can kind of see whether there's deviations from the norm, etc. And you can monitor and manage and address any kind of aberrations that you've actually come across in the overall process. So I think that ability to continually optimize, I mean, that's something that very much ties into our own philosophy around processes. So I think with the data backing it up, and with Gen AI doing what it can do, it is in a great position to actually suggest optimizations continually to your overall business operations. And things like identifying bottlenecks and areas where you could potentially boost efficiency and effectiveness are all I think, areas that it can help with.
Okay, thank you, Jared. Okay, and then our last tip, James, I guess, there's lots of talk about, the movement towards hyper automation, and obviously to achieve that, scalability is key. So could you share a few tips on how to achieve
Yeah,
that?
sure. Yeah. I mean, if one thing is for certain, it's that what's considered state of the art at the beginning of 2025 will no longer be state of the art by the time we come to the end of 2025. Which is why I like the use of this word modularity here in this point. Implementing AI in a modular fashion, it gives an organization flexibility to adapt to bring in new tools, new frameworks, new techniques as the technology and the products and software and hardware that is coming to market this year. So I would absolutely go with cloud-based implementations. The hyperscalers are implementing all sorts of new techniques and features in their existing services that make it easier and easier to roll out AI and to build tools, products, and services on top of their hyperscaler layers. But the modularity is absolutely key if you don't want to get caught in a trap of sort of re-implementing or re-engineering or optimizing an AI built product or service as you go into the second half of this year.
Excellent. Okay, thank you guys. And I think these are very concise tips, and we'll be sharing this deck and an infographic with all the attendees post-webinar. So thank you for that. I know a lot of people on the webinar maybe are not familiar with FlowForma as a company. So Jared, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk for a couple of minutes about the FlowForma product and the AI features that you've
Yeah,
introduced.
yeah, sure. So FlowForma is a digital process automation platform. It's specifically targeted at business users to allow you automate processes in a no-code manner, and this is what enables all of our citizen developers. Um, It gives you all the tools in one place that you need to automate a process, in that you can capture data through forms. You have the concept of a workflow engine with rules, etc. in there. And you have insights giving you full access to information about your processes and how they're working, etc., so that you can analyze that. And you have other elements that allow communication, such as document generation, email generation, those kind of things. So our customers and ourselves have been building solutions a lot over the past 10 years in lots of different industries and lots of different use cases. So it's very much built for business users and IT users as well. And the whole idea is to make it easier to automate your processes and to reduce the kind of technical load in doing so. So keeping in with that overall theme, over the last year, we've introduced a number of AI features ourselves. We started off with something quite straightforward, which is summarization, which allows you to summarize a process to date. So it makes it easier for people to catch up on it when they get involved in a process. That's potentially many steps in. But more recently, we've introduced FlowForma Copilot. This allows you to do is interact with Gen AI to identify processes, what the key steps in those processes are, what data might be collected at each step in the process. And you can then interact with that, as James says, through chat, where you refine your responses until you get to a point where you effectively have a reasonable description of your process. And then you can simply build that process. And that'll then give you a working automated process in FlowForma, which you can then use from that point on, or you can tweak and tune and configure further as you see fit. So our overall AI strategy is to continue to make it easier to use the product and to add further effectiveness and efficiency in your overall process automation through the use of AI. This is all done alongside the personas who currently use the product, so people who fill in forms, people who participate in workflows, and people who build out workflows.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jared. Okay. Obviously, there's been a lot shared on the session today. So the top 5 tips from Jared and James for 2025, and we've had our top 3 tips for success. So if anyone would like to discuss any of the trends discussed today or see a demonstration of the FlowForma Copilot, please just pop into the question box that you would like to have a demo or a trial or a consultation. Or alternatively, you can visit our website at www.flowforma.com post-webinar and fill in the CTAs there. We'd be more than happy to help you on your journey to success in 2025. Okay, and yes, we are close up against our time for this webinar. Lots of nice feedback coming in, people loving the insights from James and Jared. There's definitely a little bit of a trend in some of the questions that are coming in. So first question, guys, and maybe Jared, this might be one for you. So Emer is asking, can AI tools like Copilot help with a wider adoption of process automation tools within an organization?
Yeah, personally, I think they can, because I think, when you get into process automation, as I was saying earlier on, one of the barriers is understanding all the various processes in your organization. And it can be hard to try and go out and collect all that information and start documenting it all down and getting ready for process automation. And I think tools like Copilot can actually help with that, because effectively you can query them and ask them for information about processes. They're going to give you reasonably good answers in that, and it gives you a much better starting position than, as I said earlier, starting with a blank page. So I think they absolutely can help accelerate it also, or accelerate your process automation journey. And I think what it also does is it allows you to build experiments much quicker. So, for example, you can sketch out a process and say, I wonder, could we do some perhaps process automation in a particular business area? And you can have a brainstorming session with people on that and maybe start sketching out how a process might work. And one of the things we've allowed in our own implementation of FlowForma Copilot is you can actually load in drawings and diagrams, and it will actually build a process from that as well. So it's all about really kind of removing those barriers and speeding it up and making it easy for people to do experiments, and where they do decide to proceed in automating certain processes, to get to a much more completed point very quickly than they can at the moment.
Great, thanks, Jared. And a second part to that question was, Emer is wondering, is it possible to add context to the co-pilot so it would know more about like her organization's data?
Yeah, okay, that's kind of a slightly tricky one. I think as we move towards things like agentic AI, then your own organization's data becomes one of the kind of core inputs into intelligent decision making there. And when you're using a general copilot and it's interacting with a large language model, like what we've done there is very much focus the interactions in around process related, a process subject, a process automation subject. So in that way, we can constrain the answers we get and get way more focused answers out of dealing with Gen AI. You can obviously provide some of your data to Gen AI and it will then try and tailor answers based on that. And there are also various techniques you can use to augment the information that Gen AI and large language models have available. James mentioned RAG earlier, so that is one option as well to try and make it a bit more specific to your own business.
Okay, thanks for that, Jared. And James, I might put the next question to you, which is from Paul. So Paul's asking, how would James see AI agents supporting employees like on a daily basis? If we could share a little bit of context to that, that would be brilliant.
Sure. Probably somewhere between pilots and co-pilots. So, we've seen Copilot being introduced as functionality into, Office software, and that can make people more productive and more efficient. And then you have the concept of uh, agents, which are more like pilots, right? They're not co-pilots. They're pilots. They're making decisions, based on some instruction that they've been given, and they have autonomy to go and implement. Um, I think agents, particularly for 2025 and sort of initial rollouts of this type of architecture, will probably fall somewhere in the middle between pilots and co-pilots. If you think about how agents, first came about, the initial apps were, more on a retail level than an enterprise level. There were stuff like, hey, I want to go on holidays this summer, go and find me and book me, some plane tickets and a hotel somewhere in Europe. That's a reasonable use case for an agent, and I could see that sort of use case becoming popular this year. That's a very different scenario to, hey, recommend, a trading strategy for my portfolio and go and make a bunch of investment decisions. Um, so I think somewhere between, thinking about it logically, between pilot and co-pilot is where we're going to end up for sort of enterprise adoption of agents this year.
Great, thank you. And James, another question that's come in for you. So, like, what learnings, James, could you bring from AI adoption from the capital markets and big fast data world that you live in? What learnings from that space could be brought into the world of DPA?
Well, the thing I like about DPA is that it's proven in production. There's demonstrable return on investment. The industry has figured out how to productionize automation and automation tools, and has built all of this infrastructure and scaffolding around it. Jared mentioned monitoring, observability, explainability is such a key one, and just going back to agents, that's one of the difficult things at the moment is to get an agent to explain, the decision it made, and why it made it, and have an audit trail of that. So I really like this play of integrating AI into DPA. I think you get the best of all worlds. I think it's a fast track into production, and in general, I would be doubling down on things like explainability and traceability, because those are the things that are tending to trip organizations up as they're looking to sort of rush AI into production. And I feel like the world of DPA has, at least in some part, got really great answers to some of these challenges.
Lovely. Thanks, James. And I know we're coming up close to the end of the webinar. So one final question for you, Jared, and you can give us a quick response on this one. But how do you see, oh, sorry. So Jared, um, what impact do you think AI tools will have on employee satisfaction and productivity?
So I think that's kind of we'll have to wait and see exactly how that happens. But I think overall they should have a very positive, I think introduced correctly, I think they'll have an overall very positive impact on productivity, and they should also have in terms of employee satisfaction. Because fundamentally what they're doing is taking away a certain amount of tasks that need to be done, or they're assisting people doing tasks. So for example, I'm not sure much people like looking for information and rooting around within their SharePoint sites and file directories and all that kind of stuff. If AI can make that a lot easier for you, then it's going to help you do your job, and so it's going to help improve employee satisfaction. So overall, I'd expect it to have a positive impact. But it just, that kind of culture thing we mentioned earlier on, the way things are introduced are important.
Okay, thank you, Jared. There's lots of questions that have come in that are very specific to use cases, systems, getting your data ready for AI. We don't have the time today to answer all those questions, but I promise that we'll get back to everyone whose questions have been unanswered as soon as possible. So that brings us to the end of our webinar today. Thank you so much to James as our external guest speaker. You were a pleasure to work with today. I'm sure you'll have lots of people connecting with you on LinkedIn straight after this session. Thank you so much for your support. Jared,
Thanks for having me.
thank you. Thank you as always, and to everyone who joined us, thanks for your interaction in the chat and the questions facility. As a next step, there's lots of opportunities to talk to our experts. Just pop into the chat or questions if you would like to arrange a next step, such as a demo or a trial, or you can find a multitude of resources at our website at flowforma.com. And we will be in touch in the coming days with a recording of this webinar so you can have it in your records or share it with your team. Once the webinar has ended, a short survey will pop up, and we would really appreciate if you could give us your feedback there, tell us how you found today's session, and if there's any topics you would like to see our experts cover in the coming weeks. Thank you so much, and best of luck to everyone in the new year.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you. Bye
All
now.
right.